Sobrang di ko pa mapaniwala. Maraming salamat sa suporta. Sana patuloy yung suporta niyo sa
I said it many times. Nobody in this world, Russian athletes or Belarusian athletes, support the war. Nobody. How can we support the war?
4 words. That's all it took to detonate a bomb in women's tennis. When the world #1 stepped to that microphone, nobody expected what came next. The silence. Absolutely suffocating. You know that moment right before lightning strikes? That electric tension that makes your skin crawl? That's what filled that press conference room. The tennis world had been holding its breath for weeks, dancing around the controversy, pretending everything was fine while the foundations cracked beneath their feet. Social media was on fire. Locker rooms were buzzing with whispers. Officials were sweating behind closed doors. And then Aryna Sabalenka did something nobody saw coming. She didn't play it safe. She didn't give us another boring, corporate-approved response. She didn't smile and deflect like they train these athletes to do. Aryna Sabalenka, the woman who crushes tennis balls like they personally offended her, looked straight into the camera and dropped a truth bomb that sent shockwaves across every continent. She's not wrong. Boom. Game over. The establishment's carefully constructed facade shattered into a million pieces. Suddenly, everyone had permission to say what they'd been thinking all along. This wasn't just one player defending another. This was revolution. This was the queen of tennis publicly backing the underdog princess fighting against a rigged system. When the woman at the top risks everything, her relationships with tournament directors, her sponsorships, her political capital, to defend someone ranked outside the top 50, that's when you know the game has changed forever. The internet absolutely exploded. Within minutes, trending worldwide. Officials scrambling for damage control. Players quietly texting each other, asking, "Did she really just?" Welcome to the new era of the WTA, where the old playbook is dead, where silence is career suicide, and where 4 simple words can trigger an earthquake felt from New York to Manila to Beijing. This isn't just about tennis anymore. This is about power. About respect. About who controls the narrative in professional sports. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on the scandal that has the tennis establishment terrified. The rivalry that's turned into an international incident. The prodigy whose sudden collapse has everyone asking if we're witnessing the beginning of the end. I'm taking you deep inside the chaos. Deeper than the headlines. Deeper than the sound bites. I'm showing you why Sabalenka's statement was more dangerous than anyone realizes. Why the next match between certain players might need security normally reserved for championship boxing. And why one of tennis' brightest stars might be facing a career-defining crisis at just 18 years old. This is Champions Tennis. Buckle up, because what you're about to discover will change how you see this sport forever. Let me rewind the clock. Because to understand why Sabalenka's 4 words created a supernova, you need to understand the pressure cooker that was already about to explode. In tennis, news moves at light speed. Today's drama is tomorrow's forgotten gossip. But some wounds, they don't heal just because we stop talking about them. They fester. They rot. They wait for the perfect moment to burst wide open. And the controversy surrounding Eala? That wound has been infected for months. Everyone's been pretending it doesn't exist, slapping bandages on it, hoping it would magically disappear. Spoiler alert. It didn't. For the past year, Eala has been navigating a minefield. If you've been paying attention, really paying attention, you've seen the pattern. She keeps ending up on the wrong side of interpretation. Questionable line calls. Suspicious overrules. Those crucial moments where an umpire's decision completely shifts the momentum of a match. And somehow, mysteriously, these calls never seem to go her way. Now look, I'm not saying there's some grand conspiracy to keep her down. But I am saying there's a pattern as old as sports itself. The rookie gets squeezed. The newcomer gets the tough calls. The established stars get the benefit of the doubt while the young upstart has to prove herself twice as hard. It's not written down anywhere. It's not official policy. But ask any player who's clawed their way up from the qualifiers, and they'll tell you. The game is different when you're not part of the club yet. But here's where Eala is different. She stopped accepting it quietly. After her legendary run to the Miami Open semifinals, where she absolutely demolished the then world number 2 in a match that had the entire tennis universe gasping, Eala decided she'd earned the right to speak her truth. Her comments about double standards in officiating, about how certain players seem to get every close call while others have to win despite the officials rather than with their help. The tennis establishment viewed this as crossing a line. A dangerous line. Because here's the unwritten rule they all follow: you don't bite the hand that feeds you. You don't criticize the system while you're still fighting to establish yourself in it. You wait until you're untouchable, multiple grand slams, millions in the bank, before you start burning bridges. You definitely don't speak out when you're still outside the top 50. Still begging for wild cards to some tournaments. Still proving you belong in the conversation. The backlash was instant and brutal. Entitled, "Arrogant. Too much too soon." The critics crawled out of every corner. Former players who never dealt with Twitter mobs during their careers suddenly had very strong opinions about young players who don't know their place. Anonymous sources, and you know what that means, players too cowardly to attach their names, started whispering. Difficult. Diva. Needs to learn humility. The establishment circled the wagons. The pressure mounted. The message was crystal clear: apologize. Walk it back. Learn your place. Or watch your career opportunities evaporate. Then came the Australian Open. Her campaign ended in the round of 16, a straight sets loss to Elena Svitolina. Now, for any normal 18-year-old, reaching the 4th round of a Grand Slam would be amazing. That's celebration-worthy. That's building blocks for a successful career. That's exactly where you want a teenager in their development. But Mara Andreeva is not a normal 18-year-old. She won 2 WTA titles last year. She reached the French Open semi-finals. She was ranked world number 5. She wasn't being discussed as a future champion. She was a present-day contender. So a 4th-round loss isn't success. It's failure. It's regression. It's proof that something has gone terribly wrong. But the loss itself isn't the real problem. Players lose. Even legends lose matches they should win. What's terrifying is how Andre lost. The way she seemed paralyzed when things went wrong. The way she appeared to shrink under pressure instead of rising to meet it. The way she looked broken. And then Brad Gilbert, legendary coach, tactical genius, the man who's guided multiple champions to Grand Slam glory, delivered a diagnosis that went nuclear on social media. The fear hand is a major issue in a lot of her losses lately. Fear hand. 2 words that instantly went viral. Brutal. Clever. Devastatingly accurate. Gilbert continued with surgical precision. It's becoming spinny, passive, error-prone when the heat is on. She really can't do anything aggressive. And I think a lot of players now know this. This is the nightmare scenario for any professional athlete. The moment when your weakness becomes locker room knowledge. When you first explode onto the scene, you win on raw talent and surprise. Opponents haven't studied you. They don't know your patterns. They haven't cracked your code. You get free wins because nobody has the scouting report yet. But eventually, inevitably, the locker room figures you out. Coaches compile video. Players share notes. Patterns emerge. And suddenly everyone knows that if you attack Andre's forehand in pressure moments, when she's tight, when the match is on the line, when the crowd is deafening, it's going to crack. Against Svitolina, one of the smartest players on tour, someone who makes her living exploiting weaknesses, Andre looked completely lost. The stats don't lie. Only 59% of first serve points won. That's abysmal for someone with her talent. She couldn't dictate play. Couldn't impose her game. She was reacting instead of creating. Defending instead of attacking. Playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And the fear hand was at the center of it all. But here's what makes this so much deeper than just technique. The fear hand isn't about mechanics. It's psychological. It's the hesitation that creeps in when you realize the whole world is watching and expecting perfection. It's the doubt that whispers when you're about to pull the trigger on a forehand down the line. It's the fear, yes, actual fear, that you might miss. That you might disappoint. That you might prove everyone who called you overhyped was right all along. Once that fear takes root, once it becomes part of your internal dialogue, it's incredibly difficult to remove. Gilbert's warning was stark. That has got to be fixed in the short term or it's going to be tough for her to make a deep run. Not long term. Not eventually. Short term. As in right now. As in this is urgent. Because tennis has a brutally narrow window of opportunity. Andre has achieved more at 18 than most players achieve in entire careers. World number 5. Multiple prestigious titles. Millions in prize money. But here's the brutal truth. None of that matters if you can't evolve. Tennis demands constant adaptation. What worked last year won't work this year. The tactics that brought success become the tactics opponents study and destroy. If you don't fix your weaknesses, if you don't patch the cracks, the narrative shifts faster than you can imagine. Right now, Andre is at a crossroads. She can either accept Gilbert's diagnosis, do the brutal work of rebuilding her forehand from scratch, address the mental demons that turned a weapon into a liability, and come back stronger. Or she can deny the problem, insist it's just a rough patch, convince herself talent alone will be enough, and watch her ranking slide as more players figure out exactly how to beat her. Tennis history is littered with prodigies who couldn't make that leap. Who couldn't solve the problems once the locker room figured them out. The difference between a career-long champion and a cautionary tale often comes down to this exact moment. The willingness to admit something is broken and do whatever it takes to fix it. The pressure on Andreeva right now is immense. She's 18. She should be worried about college applications and first relationships and figuring out who she is as a person. Instead, she's dealing with an entire nation's expectations. Sponsorship deals worth millions. Constant global media scrutiny that builds you up just to tear you down. And now the very public diagnosis that her signature shot has become a liability. That's a lot for anyone, let alone a teenager. Some players thrive under that pressure. They weaponize it. They turn adversity into rocket fuel. Others crumble. They let doubt consume them. They lose confidence, which leads to worse results, which leads to more doubt. The spiral continues until suddenly you're no longer a top 10 player. Which version of Mara Andre will we see over the next several months? Can she fix the fear hand? Can she rebuild her confidence? Can she prove she really is the generational talent everyone believed she was? Or will this be the beginning of a slow fade, a gradual decline from prodigy to just another good player? Another, remember when, story? The answers will define her career. And based on Gilbert's assessment, we're going to find out very soon. Now let's talk about what all of this means. On one level, we have Aryna Sabalenka positioning herself as the matriarch of the tour. The wise elder who's been through the wars and is now using her platform to protect the next generation. Her defense of Eala wasn't just about one incident. It was a statement about the kind of leader she wants to be. She's thinking beyond trophy counts and ranking points. She's thinking about legacy. About what kind of sport she wants to leave behind when she eventually retires. And she's concluded that a sport where young players are punished for speaking truth to power, where officials make questionable calls without accountability, where the establishment protects itself at the expense of fairness, that's not a sport she wants to be remembered for accepting. So she spoke up. She took a risk. She potentially damaged relationships with people in power. And she did it anyway because she believes it's the right thing to do. On another level, we have Eala emerging not just as a player, but as a cultural force. A movement. A symbol of something much larger than tennis. She's not just winning matches and climbing rankings, though she's definitely doing that. She's causing stadiums to be overwhelmed. She's forcing world number ones to take public stances. She's inspiring millions of people who never cared about tennis to suddenly become passionate fans. She represents the democratization of tennis. Proof that you don't have to come from a traditional tennis powerhouse. You don't need endless resources and access to elite coaches from childhood. You don't have to fit the mold of what a tennis champion is supposed to look like. You can come from the Philippines, a country with virtually zero tennis infrastructure, and still compete with the very best in the world. That's powerful. That's inspiring. That's the kind of story that changes sports forever. Then we have Wang Senu representing the counterweight. The established Asian power of China refusing to cede the spotlight without a fight. China has invested billions into sports development over the past decades. World-class training facilities. Government-backed programs. a systematic approach to identifying and developing talent. Li Na blazed the trail, becoming Asia's first Grand Slam singles champion, proving Chinese players could compete at the highest level. Now a new generation of Chinese stars is emerging, and they're not about to quietly accept that the Philippines gets to be the story. Wang is bringing the competition, the edge, the willingness to create rivalry and tension. And you know what? Tennis needs that. Sports need villains. They need conflict. They need reasons for fans to take sides and argue and become emotionally invested. Wang might have just volunteered to be the antagonist in the story, and that's going to make her very rich and very famous, even if half the tennis world roots against her. And finally, we have Mara Andre serving as the reminder that none of this is easy. That talent and potential are fragile things. That even the brightest stars can flicker and fade if they don't tend to their craft with constant vigilance. She's the cautionary tale in a season full of triumph stories. She's the reality check when everyone else seems to be riding high. And maybe that's the most important story of all, because it keeps everyone grounded. It reminds us that for every Cinderella story, there are a dozen players struggling with demons we can't see from the outside. What we're watching unfold in 2026 is a WTA tour that looks fundamentally different from anything we've seen before. The script is being rewritten. The old hierarchies are being challenged. The barriers between players and fans are breaking down. Social media has given everyone a voice and a platform. Athletes are no longer content to just shut up and play. They want to have opinions. They want to speak out about injustice. They want to use their platforms for more than just selling sneakers and sports drinks. And most importantly, they're willing to support each other in ways that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Sabalenka says Eala isn't wrong. That's a statement about integrity and fairness. Wang says her fans are better. That's a statement about competition and pride. Gilbert says Andre's forehand has become a fear hand. That's a statement about the brutal honesty required to compete at the highest levels. Each of these statements on their own would be interesting. Together they paint a picture of a sport in flux. A sport wrestling with questions about fairness and representation and what it means to be a champion in the modern era. The real question, the only question that matters, is what happens next. Does Sabalenka's intervention actually lead to meaningful change in how officials treat young players? Or does it just make for good headlines before everything returns to normal? Does the Eala-Wang rivalry develop into something truly special? The kind of competitive fire that elevates both players and creates moments we'll remember for decades? Or does it fizzle out in petty social media drama? Does Andre fix her fear hand and return to the trajectory everyone expected? Or does she become another example of potential unfulfilled? The answers are coming. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Because this is just the beginning.